Welcome to Channel 24. Joining me now is Michael Sheitelman, a political analyst, and we have a lot to unpack today, so let's dive in. Michael, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, good evening.
Michael, I think I will not surprise you as I will start from Davos conference in Switzerland. So as it continues, I think the most important conversations and public speeches have already happened. It's always happening by Friday. So now we hear about a possible trilateral meeting in the Arabic Emirates. Jared Kushner says the end of the war is near. President Zelensky says a peace agreement and the documents are almost ready. Trump's envoy, Steven Witkoff, who is also in Davos, says the negotiation process is at a final stage. But as you said at our previous interview, that Russia's official war goals have not changed. Putin was never said that publicly. So if talks are truly near the end, why hasn't Putin publicly revised his goals?
Well, this is very interesting when you are asking about Davos, and your question is about peace agreement, yeah?
Right.
But Davos, it is still World Economic Forum. And just everybody forgot about that, I believe, that this is economic forum. We heard the speeches, that most of speeches were not about economy. Were not about business, were not about investment. Were about peace agreement or the war between United States and Denmark about Greenland, for example. And the most popular speeches on this forum, I watched the forum in the official YouTube channel of World Economic Forum. So the most watched video is the speech of Donald Trump, which was certainly not about economy. And the second most popular speech is the speech of President Zelensky, which also was not about economy, absolutely not. And all the panels about the economy situation, they gathered about hundreds of viewers, hundreds.
Or artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah. So nobody cares about business now. Everybody cares about peace and war, because everybody understands that during this time, the weapon is more important than any investment. By the way, today I watched today's speech by President Zelensky, and at the end of his speech, he had something like small press conference.
Absolutely. I love that the most. Right. What is your take on that?
Yeah, sure. And the last question of this press conference was the most amazing, because the last question was something like, but Mr. President, you know, we have an economic forum, so what could you say about economic situation? It was the last question on the end of the hour of this speech plus press conference. And President Zelensky answered during some 20 seconds. He said, invest Ukraine, because, okay, it is risky, but it is the only way we can survive and we could build the new future and peace. So this economic forum, my impression was that I watch Munich Security Conference and not the Davos. And also the people who bought the tickets, and you also could buy the ticket to this forum, they paid tens of thousands of dollars to visit that, and they heard the speeches not about the business, absolutely. And I don't believe they did a lot, they made a lot of business between them. So really, the result was that somehow the war between United States and Denmark stopped during this economic conference. And President Trump met President Zelensky, and they sounds like they agreed about the agreement. At least we heard what President Trump said. And the next step is the meeting of Steven Witkoff, Jared Kushner delegation in Moscow, which happens right now in Moscow. And also it was consequences of the meeting in Davos between Russian delegation and American delegation. So again, it is not about economy, absolutely, it is about the stopping with war. And the next step, which will be on Friday, is this meeting in United Arab Emirates between the Ukrainian delegation and Russian delegation. By the way, we don't know who are the participants of Russian delegation, but we know who are participants of Ukrainian delegation in the United Arab Emirates. At the beginning, it was looking like that is like technical meeting about, for example, exchange of war prisoners or something like that, but not. When we are looking for Ukrainian delegation, it is the most important people, everybody except President Zelensky. Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Chief of Staff of President Zelensky, new Chief of Staff, Mr. Budanov, and the Chief of Intelligence Service, Mr. Umerov. And so just everybody participates in this meeting. This is very strange. Why you need meeting on Friday in United Arab Emirates if you have so important meeting in Moscow one day before or one night before? Why it is strange? Because if Putin planned to say no this night to American delegation, so why you need some meeting in Arabic Emirates? And if Putin planned to say yes, so it is okay. It is the continuation, the details and paragraphs, and in this case, it makes sense. So today, when we have this conversation, we have very small but hope for peace. Because if they plan this meeting with Putin without results, so why they plan on the next day this technical meeting in United Arab Emirates? And President Zelensky today, he counted all the reasons for Russians to make this peace. And the main reason is the losses. They suffer huge losses on the front line, 45,000 people per month. And this is more than Russia could mobilize during the month. And this is the first time on this war when Russian army is not growing, but squeezing because of huge losses on the front line. So they are in a point then President Putin could make a last choice in this war, to continue and to lose all of his country, or to stop the war and negotiate how we will live one with other.
I was reading an article actually, just published maybe today, that Putin seems trapped between two risks. Continuing the war drains Russia's economy and stability, but while pause forces him to explain why the special military operation failed to meet its goals. So, do you think Donald Trump understands this dilemma for a Russian dictator, and could he use it deliberately as leverage in negotiations process?
I believe that President Trump does not care what is President Putin's dilemma. Oh, really? This is all of this situation which you described, and I also read it in some Financial Times or somewhere. This is the domestic problem of President Putin, not international problem. This is a domestic problem. And I believe that President Trump, the guy who has the picture of the world, very, very, common picture, not detailed. So he does not care what happens inside Russia. If we will ask now President Trump what Russia is, what is the population of Russian Federation, for example? What is GDP of Russian Federation? He never heard that. Does Russia have some governors? He doesn't know, absolutely. If you ask from President Trump to mention some people from the Russian elites, I believe that except of Putin and maybe Medvedev, he doesn't know anybody, just anybody. His impression of President Trump that this is the war not between Russia and Ukraine, not between the huge countries, not between the biggest country in Asia, which is Russia, and biggest country in Europe, which is Ukraine. For him, it is the war between two personalities, between Putin and Zelensky. And by the way, he said it yesterday in his speech. He said that the biggest problem and the war started because of hate between Putin and Zelensky. And he does not care that this is the war between two nations and not two people. And if we could say that, I don't know, the next president of Ukraine will be anybody else, but not Zelensky, the war will continue, obviously. So this is the domestic problem of Putin, and Trump will not help in that, and he doesn't know how to use that. I believe he doesn't know how to use the internal problem, but he know how to use the economical problem, because this is not internal, not domestic, and he make a lot of steps against Putin, not so obvious, not so direct, but to arrest the Russian fleet, for example, oil fleet, it is very strong step against Russian Federation. To help us to make the strikes against Russian refineries, for example, and Americans will help us to make these strikes against Russian refineries. This is also very important steps and very important pressure on Russian Federation and personally on Putin. Yes. So on this part, President Trump cares really about how President Putin will explain to his own nation that they lost the war. I could help President Putin, and I could say that really this is the point now when it is the last chance to say we win this war. They win this war, and they are so tired, Russians, from this war, so we will believe. We will say, okay, you won this war? Yeah. We will celebrate. We will celebrate. We will organize the parade on the Red Square that this is the huge victory of President Putin, and we won this war, and the Ukraine collapsed. That's it. That's it. But if the war continues one more year, for example, I'm not sure that this explanation will be enough to Russian nation. But today it will be enough for Russian nation. That okay, that was the plan.
How could you imagine a Russian dictator would appeal to Russians in a year? If now you're saying it's like, okay, we are winning, we're celebrating, drinking champagne. So what's going to be the answer in a year?
If he does not stop the war now, and if West continue to support Ukraine, I mean, Ukraine can't stay in this war without Europe and United States, obviously. This is not Ukraine alone. But if Europe continues to support financially with weapon and with all the logistic and intelligent services, so in this case, in 1 year, we will have the new dictator in Russia and not the old guy Putin. Because, yeah, he has the internal problems. Obviously, he has a huge domestic problems, but not with a nation, but with Russian elites. And Russian elites, they lost a huge money during last 4 years. And now they are on the edge of stopping that. They just can't lose more. And they are very disagree with continuation of the war. This is the only reason why I believe that we have, let's say, 5% or 10% possibility that the war will be stopping today. I don't mean today, that which is today, but in the, let's say, in the foreseeable future. The reason that Russian elites were not ready to continue lose the money, to lose the country, they see that. They obviously see that. And their belief in Putin is declined every day. And for example, everything depends on front line, obviously. In November, Putin reported that he occupied Kupiansk and he occupied Pokrovsk in November. And now we are in the end of January. And during these almost 3 months, Putin did not succeed to occupy anything. Not Pokrovsk, not Kupiansk. So just everybody see that. Donald Trump don't see that. Why? Because Donald Trump don't care about Kupiansk or Pokrovsk or where is front line. But Russians, they know everything. They know the maps. They know to read the maps. Again, I don't mean the ordinary Russian people from villages. I mean the Russian elites from Moscow and from big cities. And also elites from Ministry of Defense, for example. They know that they lost 45,000 soldiers every month, and they know that they should report to the mothers and fathers of these soldiers that they are lost, and they are lost without any result, because Russian army did not occupy nothing. So in 1 year, I don't believe that Putin will have a chance to say anything to Russian nation.
Right. Russian delegation and Russian diplomats were not welcome in Switzerland for the last 4 years, because I remember 2022, Ukraine was in the Russian house in Davos in Promenade Street. In this, we were showing Russian war crimes connected to foundation of Viktor Pinchuk. So I remember that was happening, and they were kind of in exile in Davos conference. What was your reaction, Michael, when you saw Kirill Dmitriev appearing in Davos, walking with his guard?
Uh, well, Kirill Dmitriev is not participant of Davos Forum. That is important. He is
Yeah.
not a participant of Davos Forum. He has some special regime. By the way, he's under sanctions of European Union. I believe he is also under sanctions of Switzerland, but I didn't check that, because Switzerland is something else, yeah. But to fly to Switzerland, you should fly over European Union territory. And if you are under sanctions, so it is banned to you to fly over European Union territory. So obviously it was some special regime and special agreement between American authorities and European authorities to allow him to come here. The same situation he had in United States. He has a sanction on him from United States government, and it was issued like special entry visa for the meeting with Mr. Witkoff in United States, and the same situation now. So de facto, it is not like, it is more the exchange of hostages on the bridge between Western and Eastern Germany. So he is the participant of this. He is like hostage, not like a guest. He is not on. He has not a tribune to speak with nations, to participants, etc. So obviously, it is just like coincident that it happens during the Davos Forum. We had the same, for example, last month in Paris. It was also in the beginning of January, when in Paris there was the meeting of European leaders. So also Witkoff came to this meeting of European leaders, and also Kirill Dmitriev came to this, not to this meeting. He was not a participant of the meeting of European leaders, but he had on side place, on some cafe, we had a meeting with Witkoff. So it is the same situation. We can't say Russians participate in Davos Forum. No.
No, okay. And, referring to Zelensky's speech, he described Europe, I've just wrote it down, as a beautiful but fragmented kaleidoscope of small and medium-sized states. So in your view, is Europe capable of acting as a single, unified power right now, or will it remain divided?
Well, what was very interesting in this speech that really President Zelensky, he put a lot of pressure on Europe. Really, he put a lot of pressure. And his speech was like the part two of a speech of Canadian Prime Minister, Mr. Carney, who exactly spoke about that. He did not say Europe, because his country is not European country, but he said that we are like medium-sized countries or something like that, he called it. And he gave a brilliant speech, Mr. Carney, by the way. This speech is like, like program speech, like the speech of the new world order, really. I don't know. I believe that our audience, they don't remember these times, but at the time of Cold War, where was the Soviet bloc, where the American, European, Western bloc, but there were also the third force, let's say, which it was called. I don't remember the terminology, but it was something like the countries which didn't join. or something like that. And this terminology was the countries which didn't join not US bloc, not Soviet bloc. The leader of this bloc was India, but also the many of South American countries and African countries. And now what Mr. Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, offers that he said, okay, we are in the new reality and let's stop trying to return to the old reality. It is impossible. We can't rebuild this world order which we lived on the second half of 20th century. So anyway, we are in new reality. And we middle countries, let's say, we could all ask from the superpowers like United States or China and be dependent on these countries or organize our own bloc. De facto, he offered to organize bloc of middle countries. And he mentioned Canada and European countries. And obviously, we also could mention Australia, for example, and maybe some Southern American countries. So, President Zelensky, today's speech, it was like part two of this speech, but in less polite, let's say, less polite, less polite wording. But obviously that he's right, and obviously that this is a problem. And he put a lot of pressure on Europeans. He said, why? United States arrest Russian tankers and you are not arrest Russian tankers. He said it just today, and 1 hour after that, France arrested Russian tanker in Mediterranean Sea. Obviously, it was not connected, because for arresting the Russian tanker, you can't arrest it during 1 hour after the speech, yeah? But from symbolic point of view, it was like, okay, Zelensky brought the new idea, and Europeans did that. But this is not all. Just half an hour ago, happened something new. European Union, they paid the first 10 million euro for the tribunal, international tribunal against President Putin. And also, this is direct consequence of President Zelensky's speech. He said, why we don't have this tribunal? I understand that Americans, they don't want Hague and they don't want international court and they have a sanction, put the sanctions against international court. Yeah, they don't like international court. But our European tribunal, we started with why we did not do anything. And just couple of hours after this speech, Kaja Kallas, who is the head of European diplomacy, she said, yeah, today, we just today paid the first payment for this tribunal. Interesting. So it works. This pressure works. This pressure on Europe looks like, yeah. And we have a good partner, Canada. By the way, it will be new for our audience. Then President Zelensky was not president and just a candidate to a presidency. He proclaimed his candidacy in interview inside Ukraine to one of most popular Ukrainian journalists, Mr. Dmitro Gordon. And this interview was the most watched interview in Ukrainian history. It was about 10 million viewers or something like that. And when journalist Gordon asked Zelensky, who was just proclaimed his candidacy, what do you think about NATO? And he knew that lot of people and more than 50% of Ukrainians want to be NATO members. But President Zelensky said, maybe not NATO. Maybe we could have some bilateral agreements, like, for example, with Canada. You know?
You think there was a prophecy or something?
Exactly. It is so strange. I remember how strange it was during this interview. It was at the beginning of 2019, so it was 7 years ago in January. 7 years ago, and in 7 years we see that these vectors of Canada and Ukraine, they closer and closer and closer. And now, when we could take a map of the world, and we can, draw the new union of these middle countries. So the most western side of this union is Canada, and most eastern is Ukraine. And in the middle, Germany, France, Poland, etc. So it is very symbolic that in this forum, in this big, high forum, these two leaders, they brought the same ideas from two different flanks of this potential union.
Yeah, Michael, I think it's coming something in the air. Michael, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for that. You helped me and our audience to, click the puzzle and to understand international policy and Davos conference much more for today. So thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nataliia, for this conversation. Yes, thank you.